Well, Dr. Hardesty, thanks for joining us today. I know you're very passionate about getting good information out there, educating people about the protocols that hospitals are administering for COVID-19. Now, tell me, what personally has driven you to really get into this?
Number one, I'm not okay with people being lied to or deceived with intentions to do physical harm to people. That's number one. I'm never going to be okay with that. I actually watched my own father-in-law, my wife's dad, in early February, the first week of February, before COVID actually got to Texas.
Yeah.
It wasn't here. Maybe on the outskirts of California and New York, but it wasn't here. But he walked into a hospital, was actually misdiagnosed with the flu that he never tested positive for, and the ill-advised hospital protocols they used drugs that actually caused acute kidney failure, pulmonary edema, which they misdiagnosed and called pneumonia, and it wasn't. And I watched them actually one day after another over a 9-day period murder my father-in-law in a hospital, and stood behind these are hospital protocols that we have to follow, and it is his best chance, when in fact it wasn't. I called him out on all of those. I was kicked out of the hospital on day 6, and over the next 3 days, they convinced my wife's family to follow through with just the protocols that eventually took his life on day 9. Fast forward 3 months later.
So let's go back a little bit before you get rushed through that. So when did they actually realize that he had COVID-19?
No, he never did. They actually diagnosed him with the flu that he never had. There was no COVID-19 testing going on in Texas. So this was
early on. And so are you saying they used remdesivir on him?
Nope. They actually killed him with a different drug. It's called vancomycin. So this is an antibiotic that they actually prescribed him as a part of a hospital protocol for a virus. I don't know if you know this, but antibiotics don't treat viruses. They only treat bacteria. Right. So they diagnosed him with the flu that he actually
killed the good bacteria along with the bad bacteria.
Yeah, but they actually put him on 3 antibiotics at once. One of them is called vancomycin. And it actually causes acute kidney failure in a percentage of people you give it to, and it did it to him. Over day 3, they called us to say he's now going into acute renal failure. Day 5, he's now unconscious and having to be put on a mask with forced air, only for me to show up and my wife on day 5 and 6 in the evening to find out that it never was pneumonia. From day 2 that they said he was diagnosed with, and then went into renal failure, he actually went into kidney failure because vancomycin had been being pumped into his veins for 6 days straight by them, which was known by their own admission to cause acute kidney failure. And I demanded them take it off on day 6. Then they took it off.
It was too late.
But it was too late by then, and they continued to actually replace that antibiotic with another one. They actually had him on 3 antibiotics for
So when did they figure out it was COVID?
No, they never figured out it was COVID.
They never did.
No. They actually said on his death certificate he died from pneumonia, and I actually showed him on the x-rays he never actually had pneumonia. It was pulmonary edema. They shut down his kidneys with a drug, flooded his lungs with water called pulmonary edema, misdiagnosed that as pneumonia, and then they killed him, drowned him to death with that drug treatment.
Horrible.
3 months later is when I hear in the media that more people are dying in this world, in one country, than any other country in the entire world, still today. From COVID-19, it's Americans that were dying more than any other country. Every day, there was these new death totals in early of May 2020, 3 months later.
Yeah.
When I heard the doctors doing press releases, being asked in New York, what are you guys experiencing when you're treating COVID-19 patients in these flooded hospitals in New York? What they said is what got my attention. What they were stating in every interview was, we have never seen a respiratory virus ever do this before. When we start treating these COVID-19 patients, this respiratory virus, by day 3, 4, and 5, starts causing severe acute kidney failure.
Wow.
This resonated with me because I just heard this story 3 months earlier for a different issue with my father-in-law. Yeah. And I had to immediately find out what were they doing in hospitals to treat COVID-19 patients, and I couldn't believe what I found. And I actually thought they were killing them with the same drug.
And so what were they doing, and what are they doing?
Yeah, what they were doing
other than not treating it at first.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know that with all the doctors I've interviewed and scientists, that early protocol is so important. And there is a protocol, and there are drugs available that have all been censored, that have all been minused out. But in reality, these drugs are amazing, but people are being denied. And just take us through what you found out the hospitals are doing, other than the fact that when people test positive, many times they're sent home and just said, okay, if you get worse, come back.
Yeah, so from the beginning, you've all been deceived. You still are being deceived right now. All Americans are being deceived and being told that you should just stay home if you get infections or you can't breathe. Just wait. Just wait till you get really sick, then show up to the hospital.
Right.
Never in medicine has it ever been marketed to you that you should wait till you get really sick before we ever treat you for anything. It doesn't matter if it's heart disease, cancer, a sprained ankle. It's always early treatment.
Right.
Until now. No, it's wait till you get really sick and you can't breathe, then come into the hospital. And then at that point, what I'd learned was what they were doing in every New York hospital was they were using an experimental drug on all of them. And this drug was called remdesivir. And Anthony Fauci, what I figured out is when I heard the medical doctors and the hospital administrators in the media saying the same thing, by day 3, they're going into acute kidney failure. We not only have issues with getting enough ventilators to help these sick New York citizens breathe from this respiratory virus,